underground in a coffin. I can't see nor move anything, but I can feel the moisture of dirt, moldy smell, and lack of space. I'm in so much pain all over my flesh, and through the inside it feels burning and freezing numb at the same time. I guess death isn't the ticket out of pain like everyone says, but only a start for much bigger excruciation. I wish I could remember something like how I died, what kind of life I had, or at least who I am. I don't see any light nor hear any voice from above, so far I must not have been such a good person. Maybe this is my personal hell, endless pain and darkness, without even knowing what to regret from, so I can't be saved forever. I hear something. I don't know what it is yet, but it's getting closer and closer. And there was light. Someone pulled me out of the ground. He held me tightly and said, "It's okay, I found you. I've got you, Daphne." I could feel his warm heartbeats through his smooth sweater on my bare skin. I realized I was wearing nothing but a shower gown. I wanted to hold him back, but my arm was so stiff without any strength left in it. So I leaned my head forward on his shoulder. Daphne, that's such a weird name, I thought. The view outside the car window was mostly white, except the scarlet sun. Snow was covering the plain around. The sky was so white and obscure it was hard to tell what was sky and what was cloud. Seldom there would be houses or groups of naked trees, but mostly it was field or small ranches. "So, you don't remember anything?" I turned my head to the left and shook my head slowly. "You seriously don't remember me at all?" I tried to speak, but my throat hurt so bad. He heard my groaning and stopped me. "You don't need to say anything, it's okay. It's not your fault." It was a long drive, and we head up to the north. The trees were more dense, with their needle-shaped green leaves on, and as the day brightened, light pastel colors smeared through the sky, and yellow sun shined the irregular ice patterns on the window, making it glow like crystal. It was beautiful, as it had serene sadness in it, with surrounding view, which fitted well with the music from the CD player on the car. I asked him about the songs, and he replied, "They are Elias Smith's, your favorites." He smiled, a warm smile. I guess the taste doesn't change even without the memory. We haven't said much things along the rest of the drive to his place, which were placed in a town called Paradise. I got out of the car with him helping me up. He covered his coat around me and held me on his arm on the way to his house from the car, so I wouldn't have to walk on snow on bare feet. He was living on Sixth Street in a cabin around the woods, and if he walked for just a few minutes, we could see the lake, he said, and promised to take me there once I get into better condition. He'd been so caring and devoted to me. All through the afternoon, I wondered if he's my husband, 'cause I wouldn't mind if he was. After eating the warm soup he made, we sat on the couch. Neither of us could keep the conversation long enough. It was awkward for a while. I could feel his glimpsing at my cuts and bruises. "I'll get you some new clothes to put where," he said, like he just realized I was still on my shower gown. "Do you know what happened to me?" I asked him as he stands up. He turned back and stared at me with the look you would give to a child who just lost his or her parents. He knelt down in front of me and slowly stroked my hand. He looked away. He looked away from me. He looked away from my glaring eyes and said, "Later. We'll talk it later." He kissed the scar on my hand. "Maybe it's a good thing you have lost your memory." He looked at me again. "We can start over again like we wanted to, without anything holding us back." He smiled, a twisted smile, and said, "Of course, you don't remember." The night when I was sleeping in his bed, while he slept on the couch, one memory came back. Through my dream, at least part of it. I knew it was memory while I was in the dream. I just knew it. I was finishing taking shower in the bathroom, put on the shower gown. Same one I was wearing today. Went out and saw a man drinking vodka with cigarettes on his hand, rubbing it on the couch he was sitting in. It made weird sound as a flame made a little hole on the black fake leather looking seat. I couldn't see his face for some reason. He noticed me and tried to stand up, but soon collapsed on me. I asked him to get off me and leave. He threw the vodka bottle on the floor to crash, grabbed my face with one free hand and said, "Oh, Daphne, my Daphne, don't be so cruel." He lighted a new cigarette. "Open your mouth, honey." He forcefully opened my closed mouth and breathed out the smoke in it. I coughed harshly and pushed him off. He fell on the floor, and one of his hand landed on the shattered glasses piece from the bottle. He saw his blood and glared at me angrily. He rose up and on the part with more glasses shattered on it. He saw me bleeding, both from the wound he gave me and the glass pieces stuck on my skin. He started kissing my body apologetically. When he tried to kiss my lips, I turned away, and that ticked him off once more. He grabbed me, threw me on the bed, and slapped me on my cheek. Then he would kiss me. He kept hitting me and kissed me for a while and untied my shower gown. In the process, I wanted to scream and push him off, but my body was as stiff and unmovable as that of a corpse. When I woke up, soaked in sweat and tears, I was stunned for a while. Then I began to scream my head off. He came running from the living room, held me tightly as he did when he pulled me out of the grave. I screamed and screamed for a while, which eventually turned into a loud crying. Not crying like a baby or a girl, but the crying like roaring of an animal. Distraught, disgusted crying that had turned into throwing up on the bed, and he was holding me securely all through that. The next morning, when he left to get supplies at the town, such as groceries and my clothes, I turned on his laptop and looked for an article that included the word Daphne and rape. I couldn't dig out what I wanted because there were so much rape cases, so I typed in Daphne and also an abuse with yesterday's date. There were one result. I clicked on it. It was an article about James Carter had been accused of domestic violence and murder attempt against Daphne Carter. James is possibly looking toward at least a life sentence before I could move up to see what happened to the girl. I heard a door, so I turned off the internet window quickly, closed his laptop, and went to hold the door for him while he was bringing all of the stuffs he bought inside. I looked at the mail he had picked up and left on the table. Daniel Black, is that your name? He said yes, while putting food in the refrigerator. What is my last name? You never told me. He stopped what he was doing, turned back to me and said, Melanie, Daphne Melanie. He grabbed another bag full of women's clothes, pulled out some of it and laid it on my shoulder, surveying how it fits me. I didn't know your size, so I bought small. It still looks big on you. Will you try it on for me? I stared at him for a moment and wrapped my arms around his waist, with the dress caught between us. If you want me to be Melanie, I thought to myself, I will be Melanie. But soon after a couple of months, I became Black. Daniel proposed to me on the lake when the spring came. I know you don't know much about me, he said, but I know you from bottom of my heart. He put his grandmother's ring on my finger. The clear blue lake, so wide as the ocean, sparkled like they're blessing our engagement. I felt warm breeze from the east as we kissed for a long time. I never looked for the article again. I still had the nightmares of the man. It was almost always the same, with only small details that had been added. For example, since I found out that he was my husband, he would say something like, "Daphne, goddammit, I'm still your husband," or "You used to like it," when he breathed out the smoke inside my mouth. But one thing was always unclear, was his face. Dan said it wasn't worth remembering. He always held me all through the nights I had those dreams, like he knows what I was going through, even though I never told him about it. I soon became pregnant. Daniel was usually around me at the house since he worked at home. Daniel was a writer. He wrote novels and poetries and published them to newspapers or published books. He was quite successful when it became October and my belly got big and I couldn't move around as easily. He stopped his sequence novel he was writing for a magazine to take care of me full time. I told him it wasn't necessary, but he insisted. We named her baby girl Persephone, for she reminded us of the warm spring day we got engaged. While still lying on the hospital bed, I asked about our parents. I asked about his parents. His face darkened like it hadn't been for a while. He told me both of my parents are dead. I didn't bother to ask for the details. What about yours? His face hardened even more. He pulled a chair next to next to me and told me a story about his parents. My dad was an alcoholic who would joyfully hit my mom and me every night and day. He told me how much he abhorred his father. He described him as a two-faced person who acted totally different in and out of the house. Neighbors would praise him as such a good person who would help out weak and helpless people and had a really good manner, unlike his scungy-looking son and his paranoid wife. But as soon as he gets home drunk, he would assault Dan's mom in front of him. Dan's mom said she couldn't leave him because it's against her religious belief. But to Dan, she seemed like she couldn't leave him because she still had hope for him, that he would someday change. Dan's father died of an accident while drunk driving when Daniel was 13. His mom insisted having proper funeral to him in spite of tight budget they had. A few years later, his mom died of cancer. Before she died, she asked me to bury her beside Dad. I got so angry just thinking of them rotting together. I went up to my father's grave, digged his bones out, and scattered it around the woods, for animals would destroy them. I listened to him quietly throughout his story. He asked me if I'm scared of him. I shook my head and hugged him. He cried silently on my chest. Ever since Persephone was born, I hadn't had nightmares for 3 years. She was such a wondrous and beautiful little girl. She seemed more mature than regular 3 years old. Daniel absolutely adored her. They would talk and play together, more like friends than father and daughter. We decided to enroll her to kindergarten for Persephone to have some friends. We thought she was bright enough. The day before Persephone's first day at kindergarten, I had the nightmare once again, but this time it was more long and very detailed. I could hear the smallest noises and could smell everything around me. More importantly, I saw his face. Dan was out early for an appointment with his editor. I sent Persephone off to kindergarten and had the day to myself. I was confused and terrified because the face in my nightmare was Daniel's. I tried to convince myself it's only a dream, but I couldn't shake it off my mind because I knew it. I knew it was my memory. I went out and walked along the lake and sat down on a bench and looked at the horizon of the lake. It was such a beautiful scene, but I felt horrible. Then suddenly, something struck my heart like a lightning. I was having a heart attack, I assumed. I grabbed my heart and managed to walk back to the house in pain. While I was about to grab the door handle, it struck me once again, and this time, for a brief moment, I saw a white ceiling and three or four people looking at me. I sat down on the porch. Agonizing, and the memory came back before the third struck. Yes, Daniel Black didn't exist. He was James Carter, my alcoholic husband, the poor man who loathed his dad so much that he ended up just like him, except he didn't bother to look good to others. Everyone in the town knew I'm the poor girl who always got beaten up by her drunk husband. He told me the story Daniel told me, saying that why he don't touch the liquor, but after plenty unencouraging rejection letters from book publishing companies, he started drinking little by little. Later, it became his only job. I couldn't give up the man inside him that I once loved so much, but after he began to hit me, my heart went cold for him. I wanted him to leave, since the house is only property I owned, but he just wouldn't, saying he's sorry and will never do it ever again. I I took him back a couple of times, but he always ended up same. And one day I realized I could never be free from him because I still loved him. So one night, yes, that night, I bit my tongue in his arm. He realized I wasn't moving anymore, so he looked up to my face, my mouth full of blood, leaking out, dyeing the pillowcase rosy red. That pitiful man held me and cried all night, shouting, "Daphne, Daphne, how can you do this to me?" Yes, as we can assume, he put me in his car, drove me to the grave, his father's grave beside her mom's grave, where the casket was already empty. He laid me beside his mom, and later I assumed made such a scene to be caught by the police who came with the ambulance I am in, and there was the third stroke. I'm wearing an oxygen mask on a moving vehicle, doctor shouting as nurse charging the electric device to shock my heart. "Bring me back, you goddamn useless people." I closed my eyes. I could see Persephone running back from the yellow bus into my arm. My sight were turning a little blurry. I tried to focus with all the strength I had left to see her face for the last time. Yes, this is better lost memory. I got to see my daughter. I heard Persephone's laughter, the pure and graceful laughter of a child who's never known what it feels like when one's heart is breaking apart. "Goodbye, Mom." And then there was light.